started. I'll call to order the Board of Selectmen regular meetings for today, Wednesday, April 10th. I'll start off by indicating that obviously in the past month, we've been working rather consistently on the budget. The preliminary budget meeting is April 25th in the Center Gym at 7 o'clock. 7:30, excuse me, 7:30. That'll be the time for the public to come in and ask any questions. We will be mailing out the preliminary budget, proposed budget, to all our households, specifically with the numbers on there, so that if there are questions, you can prepare for them. I also wanted to acknowledge some of our residents who were awarded certificates of achievement. And Nita Sudair, for example, is the winner of the election for Miss President US from Woodbridge, demonstrating exemplary leadership, clarity of speech, and excellence in her presentation. We also provided a citation to Rabbi Rona Shapiro of B'nai Jacob for her work over the last 10 years in our community and at B'nai Jacob. And also, Wynn Davis was recognized by the St. Patrick's Day Ball Committee from New Haven. He's a Woodbridge resident, and he received the Cornelius Driscoll Award for Outstanding Public Service. On a sadder note, we lost a couple of members of our community. Dick Blackwell, who has been an active member in the town in terms of on the Library Commission. He's currently our treasurer and a very good personal friend, helped immensely during my campaign, and has always been there and provided me a lot of guidance and support. He passed away recently, as did Wanda Luciani Kesses, also a very prominent member of our community who has done many things here in our town. And it's on a sad note that we say thank you to them and recognize their contributions to our town. With that, we would like to start our first agenda item, next agenda item, which would be the Woodbridge Board of Education Superintendent, Vanda Tenza. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always. So I'm just going to share a few things. Our enrollment is up to 878, so it's about 5 less than where we started the year. We usually dip a little mid-year, and then we start to grow again in the spring. Just a few other pieces, our roof and grounds project, so just to kind of keep you updated, and I'll be keeping the community updated as well. We had a walkthrough this afternoon for interested firms that want to bid on our roof, and we had probably 8 or 9 roofing firms there walking around on the roof and taking pictures. So we feel very good that our timing is excellent, we're not too late in the process, and that we're gonna get a competitive group of bids. They'll be coming into Town Hall next Friday, mid-morning. So we're excited to hear how that goes, but we felt really good about it. And we've also participated in initial meetings to plan the scope of the grounds work that should help address some of the drainage issues at BRS. So this group has gone back and forth and is sending us pictures and questions, and we've done Zooms, asking us, what kinds of things do you want here? Would you like concrete here? And so we're gathering some information, early stages of that. So their timeline is hopefully to come back to us with a good solid plan of approach in early to mid-May, and that will have it kind of phased out as to what they might be able to do like at the same time that the roof is happening and what might need to wait a little bit later. And then, there are some plantings that we probably would not want to do in the dead heat of summer. So they're working with us on that. Space needs, I'm sure that Dr. Madonic will later address the next steps and timeline for the Beecher Road Infrastructure Upgrade Building Committee. She put a lot of letters there. I thought that was clever. BIUBC is what I shall refer to it henceforth.
I thought the same thing typing the agenda.
Thank gosh, there's a name
I
to
didn't
it.
make up the name.
So once,
Think about the initials as you make up the name.
Yeah.
You should be
It's
pronounced.
true.
yes. So I was just quite relieved with that. My day was made. So once confirmed with her, kind of like announcements on current committee members and things, we understand that our consulting group, Consulting Solutions Group, is working with Maria, and they will then provide an updated timeline that will extend through later May in terms of looking at architects who were interested in drafting us proposals. So this is the first step of many, many steps in our efforts to gather information about what is best for the community and what is best for Beecher Road School. So we're excited, and we're gonna be methodical and gather what we need and work with the town and the committee to do what's best. So we're very excited. I think seeing people on the roof really helped build excitement today. So, and I just want to close by just referencing Teacher and Staff Appreciation. So it's marked on many calendars as next week, well, not next week, May 6th through the 10th is Teacher Appreciation Week. In education, we often broaden it because overlaps with Para-Education Week and Nurse Education Appreciation and Custodial Appreciation. We're appreciating everybody, and it's kind of like the Oscars. We don't want to leave anybody out by listing everybody, but it does include our lunch staff and our secretaries. It includes everybody, and as is often the case with many cultural celebrations, we can honor them often and frequently with food. That's just something that is just embedded in culture, and a variety of other ways as well. And I just want to point out that we have studied gratitude this year, starting with my convocation and throughout the year, and the power that gratitude has to really strengthen a team. And so our hope is that we can share with our staff what we've learned about gratitude, in that it can fill you if you're a recipient of it, and it can also make you want to replicate that. If you're the giver of gratitude and somebody receives it, it makes you want to replicate those actions and intentions. So it helps us know that we can rely on each other. And when practiced and given, research and experience even this year has shown us that when you practice it and you give it and you receive it, it generates positivity and momentum. And so our hope is that the first week of May, our teachers will have their cups so full of gratitude that they will have the energy and enthusiasm to positively embrace the last few weeks of the year, which can get a little sketchy.
You think you could do that for us?
It will help over here, Tom.
There's a lot of research behind gratitude. We've done a lot of reading and studying and reflecting. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for you.
Any questions for Superintendent Von Tenza?
I will send along our appreciation. We have a couple of dates already scheduled that any of you could feel free to come join us for ice cream and or vegetable lasagna.
That sounds
Thank
great.
Hosted by our very young
Ice cream
Jane Robbie.
regular?
Oh, love
So-
Jane.
I'll send those to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is an executive session for us to review status as relates to our Open Communities lawsuit. We have our attorney from Carmody and Torrance, and are we waiting for our other?
Thought Tom was coming as well.
Okay. We can go into executive session, and this is pursuant to Section 1-2006B for Open Communities Litigation Strategy and Discussion, docket number HHD CV 22-6166-209-S. And case name is Open Communities Trust, LLC et al. Versus Town Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Woodbridge et al. Joint session with, and we would like this to be a joint session with the Planning and Zoning Committee, Town Planning and Zoning Committee. We have a few members here that we'll go into executive session with. If a quorum appears at that point in time, you will need to notice it. It has been noticed as the meeting.
5:15 was
Okay.
the starting point for the TPZ special, the town planning and zoning special meeting.
Okay,
So we'll give
so we'll give them a few minutes, and as a matter of fact, maybe, Tony, do you want to go over anything before we get into that? From your report?
They may take a few minutes.
Okay,
We could do a brief recess until 5:15.
why don't we do that?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So I'll make a motion that we
There are a
recess.
couple of people sitting in their car that are TPZB.
Yeah, and they have
Just
4
wait and
minutes.
come.
They're probably counting down the minutes because
I'll
it said.
second. I'll second your motion for a
Second.
recess. Any thoughts? All in favor? Aye. All right, so we'll
Recess till
recess.
5:15?
Yes.
Recess till 5:15, please. You'll cut that off?
Just fill in time.
All right, we are calling back to order our meeting, Board of Selectmen meeting, and our next item on the agenda is the executive session, as I read earlier. Invited to that executive session, or coincident with that executive session, is an and the Planning and Zoning Commission will be part of that executive session. So we'd like to offer them the opportunity to call their meeting to order, after which we will go into executive session.
Thank you. My name is Yovan Tansmir. I am the Vice Chairman of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, and with us today, we have members, Commissioners Paul Schatz, Andrew Skolnick, Ben Cherry, Aaron Hoffman, Jeff Kennedy, and Kathy Hunter are all in attendance.
Thank you. Now, you'll call executive session as well, Yoni?
Yes, and so I guess I would move that our commission be, go into an executive session. All in favor?
Second.
Second? Yeah, aye, okay.
And I now ask for a,
Yeah,
I
need to invite me.
Oh, okay, so for the record, we're inviting Christine Sullivan into the executive session.
thank you. I would like a motion for us to also move into executive session.
And invite Tony Genevieve.
Invited into this will be Tony, our Director of Finance and Administrative Officer, Tony Genovese, Town Council Attorney Bloom, Town Council Attorney Bamonte, who will be here and will enter the executive session when he arrives. Present members of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, outside counsel Attorney Gerard and Attorney Nolan, and Land Use Analyst and Acting Zoning Enforcement Officer Christine Sullivan. So do I have a motion?
I make that motion?
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. We will move into executive session at this point.
At 5:20 p.m.
Thank you. Continue with our agenda, and the next item on the agenda is public comment. And is there anyone here for public comment? And Mr. Hunter, if you would like to wait for Steve, you're welcome to do so, or you can start right now.
Yeah, real short, I can start.
Please.
I'm Scott Hunter, and 52 Indian Trail. I wanted to thank you guys for allowing public comment. I'm going to be real brief, because I see that you have a very short agenda. But I looked this morning when I saw the agenda posted online, and I saw that you had coming up after this public comment was the Lucy Street lease assumption, Tyler Smith, and then Alpha Capital. And what I also saw was action as appropriate. So when I saw that, and I saw that you might be taking action to consent to the assumption of the ground lease, I felt compelled, to state the obvious, to come down here to state the obvious. And so that I just wanted to offer something that's probably you've thought about, and don't mean to, toot a horn, it's your job, and I'm sure you're gonna do it, but I just want to make sure that when we think about the consent that we may be offering, that we don't offer it in advance, we offer it as part of the deal that you're working on. And that it's not just offered in advance, and that it's actually part of the whole deal that you're giving the consent, so that what actually the consent is predicated upon actually occurs. As you all know, I'm stating the obvious again, that this is a very important piece of property down on Lucy Street. It's the old Warner School. It's in our 2030 project boundary. And it also comprises what I believe to be 75% of our affordable housing stock. So 30 out of the 40 units that are on our appeals list are there. So I'm stating the obvious, but I felt because you could be taking action to approve the consent, that it should be based upon the deal that it's being surrounded by, that you guys decide actually occurs. So that's the only comment I want to thank you so much. You're doing a great
Thank you.
job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Scott.
That public comment.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Seeing no one, we'll continue. Rather than the motion of the board, if the board will accept this, I would like to recommend that at this point in time, we skip over Tony's item on the agenda and move along with some of the folks who are here to present to us in regards to the other topics. So the next one would be the, let me look at this a little bit and talk to Tony. I'm not sure.
You could do Lucy Street.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Could be a bit.
You think so? All right, then maybe you should do the other one. We won't be that long.
All right.
Yeah, do the healthcare.
We're thinking, Tyler, if you'll excuse me for a moment, we're gonna skip an item and we're gonna go to the healthcare, with the agreement of the board, the presentation of healthcare renewal with Greg Coyne.
So I'll make a motion that we take number 9, then number 8, and then go back to number 7? Is that what
Thank
we're
you. Yes.
contemplating? Okay,
Yes.
so
Thank
that's a
you.
motion.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Sir. Sorry, Steve. This me?
Good evening.
Hi.
I have Michelle Karpowicz with me, who's with,
Michelle.
I'm with Blueprint Benefit Advisors, and Michelle is the account manager for the town. So if she needs to chime in, I don't know.
You can pull up a chair right next to him if you'd like.
She can sit right here. I don't know.
There you go. Perfect.
Good.
My understanding is that you have, either in paper or digitally, this 5 or 6 slides.
Yes, we do.
And so, I don't know if you have a preference, but I'm happy to go through it and sort of go through the bullets and possibly discuss or take questions as we go, or just take them out of the gate. I also don't know if in some of these bullets, it gets into like the going out to bid and competitive stuff, so I don't know if we need to go into executive session for any of that, but
We're not able to go into executive session since it wasn't, we didn't put it specifically on
Okay.
the agenda. So if you think that there's something that you feel would warrant executive session, we can set it up for another time. Or,
I think
Add
we're
to the
okay.
agenda.
or we can add
it,
executive
yeah.
session. If everyone agrees, we can add it to the agenda as a, do you feel that there's competitive information here that requires an executive session?
I would probably say it's best.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session and invite our consultants in. And Tony Genovese.
Tony Genovese.
And our attorney, why not?
Is there a second?
We're just making history. And right with these meetings,
All in
guys,
favor?
huh?
All right, let's do that.
Very good.
That's the only way to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler, I'm sorry, but will be another moment.
No worries.
There were no motions made and no votes taken. And we will continue on the public segment of our discussion with regard to healthcare and dental.
So our, we all have the packet that has our numbers. I just want to make a quick comment on the numbers page. And so the numbers page, just, it is laid out so that you have your life insurance. You'll notice the cost does not change at all because it's not up for renewal. Your dental, we're suggesting a change to Delta, so that's why there's a reduced cost. It's about 10%. Your vision, we're suggesting it's only for Board of Ed. It's to tag along with Delta. It's the exact same cost. Your medical was a initial 13.9%. That final result 3.6%, and so staying with Connecticut. And your Medicare supplement for your retirees, that changes in January. It's not a July price. So next January, I would expect you'll get a moderate single digit because it usually doesn't go up by more than that. And so we're suggesting to leave that alone. The total result, this is for town, police, Board of Ed, is basically a 3.05% if you add all the lines of coverage together. So,
Increase.
An increase, you're saying, 3
An
point.
increase,
Yeah.
yes.
No.
So our carriers that we're renewing, just, I sort of mentioned them already, but Connecticut, initial 13.9, and negotiated down to 3.6. Last year it was 4.5, the year before it was 0. Anthem, the retiree plan, increased last January at 5.6. The dental and vision was on rate lock, but the market was so competitive that we are suggesting change because the prices were much lower. Even though Anthem came back and lowered their price, the market was just so much better. And your life insurance is not up for renewal, so it's on rate lock, which just means it's not renewing right now, and so the price is not changing. Medical trend, so medical trend means like what is medical services going up by? It's sort of medical inflation. So average trend for Connecticut is medical is going up by 7%. Drugs are going up by 16%. So driven by specialty drugs. So it's creating a combined increase of about 9 to 9.5%. So what that means is most employers with a loss ratio of 80 to 85% are going to get that renewal. Employers with a much worse loss ratio get a much higher number, and employers with much better loss ratio get a lower number. Connecticut's trend isn't different than the marketplace. Cigna's running 9.5 to 11, Aetna's running 9.1 to 9.6, and Anthem is 10.5 to 11. So then there's your loss ratio, and I'm talking right now as the total group, all the three together, town, police, Board of Ed. 2023, and I'm saying calendar year 2023 because it's actually the most recent 12 months we have available. There isn't anything available that's better than to the end of 2023 that's done by Connecticut. And so our 2023 Connecticut loss ratio was 88% for all three. The previous calendar year was 75, but that 75, when you really look at how it ended on the contract year, turned it to 94. That's how like claims make that loss ratio really go up and down. The town, the police, had a higher loss ratio than the Board of Ed this year and last year. But if you look at really a whole bunch of years prior, it was the reverse. So it can flip-flop. Large claims incurred, January 2022 through December 2023, paid through February. So we had 21 claims over $50,000. We have 17 that are still active right now. We have 12 months of our pharmacy spend is $970,000. And for calendar year 2023, Connecticut paid out over $4.1 million in claims.
Can I ask you a quick question about our claims? Do we have stop-loss insurance or anything like that?
No, because we're basically fully insured, so Connecticut takes everything on, and so we do not. But our plan has a little twist where, like, if we happen to have low claims, they basically give us back a portion of the premium. But basically, we're fully insured where you just pay your premium, and you do not owe anything further.
They take care of it on their
Right,
end.
if
Yeah,
your
okay.
claims were absolutely just totally catastrophic, like the renewal's gonna show, the market is gonna sort of respond to that, but you could leave Connecticut and not owe anything, because that's how your contract works.
Okay, thank you.
So, there's a in summary page, and so the in summary is for medical, to renew with Connecticut. And a couple reasons just why that suggestion is the case, because the savings differential with the very, very good carriers, very good quotes, is a few percentage points, it doesn't seem to be worth this disruption to make that change. There also we're sort of looking ahead always to next year, and we feel like making a change, like you can call it, I guess, unnecessary change when you change for too little, and then it sort of prevents you from making a more meaningful change the following year. The other thing that was a factor is, even though those are very good carriers and really good numbers they gave us, Connecticut has been as good a partner in renewal as you could hope. And So we were a little worried about changing and then having essentially a short year where they have to generate a renewal in 6 months and then not getting a good renewal. On dental and vision, we're suggesting a move to Delta, a top carrier in dental. The network is better. Every single out-of-network provider is in-network. 20% of your claims are being processed out-of-network, and now they'll be in-network. On dental, the savings is 10%, and so we're able to make plan improvements because our plan is a little bit below sort of like the average, and so we're making plan improvements and still saving 10%. And the vision many times just kind of tags along with the dental, so the vision is Board of Ed only. We're recommending Delta. The vision network, it's a little more, there's some in-network providers, there's some out. An example is LensCrafters is in the Anthem network, but it doesn't happen to be in the Delta network. Pearl is in both, but you can say definitely that Delta has a better like private physician listing. It's just there's a little more big box stores in the Anthem. The retiree coverage, we're recommending to stay with Anthem on that change. And so we're asking the board to approve the renewals with Connecticut for medical, move the dental and vision to Delta and Delta Vision for the alternative plan that's 10% less on dental, and to remain with Anthem for the retiree coverage over 65 medical.
Thank you. Allison, just make a note that page 4 should be taken out of that package.
I've already screenshotted it and told it aside.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna, 'cause that's the motion.
Greg, Michelle, I think it's pretty evident how thorough an analysis that you did, or the work that you've done for us, so I thank you for that. And I believe at this point in time, it's on us to approve this.
Correct.
Or to vote on it. So is there any additional questions we have?
Yeah, just a quick question. So this is beginning July 1?
July 1st, correct.
And we'll insert it into the budget for not the preliminary budget hearing, right? Or do we have a number already in mind?
So I used this number when I put the budget together.
Okay, so we don't need to insert anything. All right, great. Good. Excellent.
If I could add one more point, I just forgot one thing, and that's our compensation, because our compensation is built into your rates. So your Blue Cross rates include our compensation. And so carriers have like a standard compensation, and in your group size, it's about 3%. Sometimes it's 3.5%. It depends. My partner Brian had it pegged at 1.6%. So we are keeping that steady where it's at. You in my opinion, have like a high expense, but municipalities do for your group size. So we sort of think it's appropriate to keep it suppressed. I'm a Woodbridge resident too, so I have an interest in wanting to sort of keep everything in check. So the commission level is the same.
Thank you.
Thank
You remember what it was like on the other side of the table here, huh?
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the renewals with Connecticut for medical, move the dental and vision to Delta Dental and Dental Vision, specifically the alternative plan that offers 10% savings, and remain with Anthem for retiree over 65 medical.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. No opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going backwards now. We'll never get out of here.
All right, the next agenda item, we have here with us Tyler Smith from Alpha Capital. This is with regard to the Lucy Street lease assumption. Tyler?
Thank you.
The board, in case, just as an update, the current owner of the Lucy Street complex is looking to move the lease to Tyler and his company. and you've been sent materials that we've been talking about this for quite some time with Tyler and with the other owner. Myself, Tony have gone to the complex. We've had a tour of the complex. We've looked at a number of different items. Tyler has agreed, and his company have agreed to expanding or increasing the number of units that are currently deeded as affordable housing from 6 to 10. And they're prepared to do some of the maintenance work that has not been done for some time now, including the roof and fencing and things of that nature. We're also right now dealing with a problem with the washing machines, based on some of the tenant input that we've received. So, in order to make this happen, for the lease can be transferred. There's no monetary changes, there's no lease changes, there's nothing along those lines. However, Chaffa, which currently holds mortgage on the property, is indicating they're looking for a document, or they're looking for approval, indication that the landowner, Town of Woodbridge, is agreeable to the transfer. So, and that's what we're here to discuss. So with that, I'll open it up for questions to Tyler, if we have any in regards to what it is we're looking to do.
Would it change the duration of the lease at all, or
Does not.
all things are equal?
Everything stays as it is in the lease.
What are the advantages to the town, to us?
In our
this
case, the additional affordable housing and happier tenants is we expect, based on our conversations, that there has, I didn't know this until very recently, as a matter of fact, we did find a file. There is a file of tenant complaints that Jerry Shaw had put together that indicates there was a pretty significant degree of dissatisfaction with the current situation that they have. So we're hopeful. That's one of the big benefits along those lines.
I think my only questions were related to if there was going to be a change in the lease terms, et cetera, but you've answered that.
Nothing changes as far as the lease terms are concerned. My biggest concern, and this is the one that I expressed to Tyler, was that we assure there's no means by which these residents who are currently there and able to afford to live there can continue to afford to live there. And at some point in time, there's no intention or movement toward pricing this in such a way as the existing tenants would not be able to afford it. Part of what you received in your package is an indication as to what their projected rents will be. There is projected to be a 6% increase for the next 3 years. And that's already started. The current owner has already started that. The 6% is specifically to develop a reserve fund so that they are able to do the roof, which is a significant number in terms of replacement of the roof, and do some of the other maintenance. After 3 years, the intent was for their rent to increase by 3%, or go down, instead of the increase being 6%, go down to 3%.
6% a year for the
A
next
year. Year for the next 3 years. So in 3 years, it'll increase by 18%, which is significant from my
that
perspective.
sounds like a lot.
That's happening whether we get a new tenant or not, or whether we get a new lessor or not. And there's nothing.
So will there be a new contract written by our town?
No.
Okay.
No, unless,
It would be a simple assignment, it's like a one-page document, basically.
my other question, Nick, is can that include some of the criteria that we've already agreed to, so that we have something in writing that indicates they'll do it? And my concern, honestly, and this is based on discussions I've had today, is if we agree to the lease change and it happens, how then can we assure that what was promised is delivered?
Sure.
That's the concern. So we would look to have a document, obviously, that would be signed some sort of something that indicates or gives us some degree of indication.
I mean, it wouldn't be, something like that may not be appropriate for a lease even to start with, so it wouldn't be like we're actually amending the lease document,
Correct.
but we can craft some sort of separate side agreement that this new potential lessee would sign along with the Board of Selectmen. bind us to those conditions.
Tyler, how much more time is on the Chaffa mortgage?
I believe it's about 7 or 8 years.
Okay? And what's your intent? Why don't you, I should have started by
So yeah, so
allowing-
obviously with the CHAFA, my intent is to assume that, right? I've already been approved by CHAFA, so they've underwritten me, my company, all that, so they've already given approvals there. As far as like some of the concerns that you brought, right? Like we are increasing the low income tax credit units from 6 to 10. That will likely be a deed restriction that will have to be recorded on title, right? Just obviously hold me accountable to make sure that, those additional units remain affordable. I know obviously, it is a big concern that they remain affordable, and I think by increasing those units, it helps the town and achieve their goals. And also the state of Connecticut increasing the affordable housing.
And the other units, the remaining units, if 10 units are, there's 20 other additional units if I'm not mistaken.
So those are considered, so everything would be continue to operate as elderly housing. And, we would just kind of implement the game plan that we have laid out, right? Is those 6% increases for the next 3 years and then 3% after that. So the intention is to leave all the residents in place, right? And really the only reason, to your point, why those rents are going up is because we have to replenish that reserve account. Because as it sits right now, there's like, I think $5,000 in it. And there is some immediate attention as far as the roofs across all 3 buildings. All of the exterior fencing is kind of rotting and needs to be addressed, right? So a lot of what I'm planning to do at first is cosmetic upgrades to improve the grounds, right, the property, and all that good stuff. So
something that was brought up by the public in regards to this was concern that on your website, one of the things you prominently display is that you flip properties. And the concern is that you'll flip this property, do some cosmetic changes, and flip this property.
So I have no intention on selling this property. We do flip properties. They are primarily single families, right? Small multifamilies. So we have a fix and flip business where that's the main model. I have sold some of my other buildings, but it was really because they were smaller and I used the money to buy bigger stuff. But there's no intention to flip this. And that would require approval anyway. So the conversation that I had with John, the current owner, is that this is kind of like a longer term play for us. And yeah, so there's no intention on flipping the property.
Just to ask, how could they? Because doesn't the town own it?
Yeah, they would need approval.
Somebody
okay.
would come here and do the same thing that Tyler's doing now.
Okay,
Yes.
I see. Okay. So you mean flip as a leasee? Like change hands
Flip
again?
the lease, yeah.
Tyler's promising to do a lot of good things and be a good landlord. If he was looking to flip it, that could last for maybe a year or two, and then we're in the same situation
Sure.
again.
Okay.
So what I was getting at, and I think what this person was looking at, is for some sort of commitment that that
Consistency.
that they're not looking just simply to do this as an investment property and move on. So.
So with the deed restrictions on the affordable piece, does that somehow, does that now limit the increase in the rents on those pieces, or is it so much below that it doesn't?
Yes, on the low income tax credit units, it does.
It does limit it?
Yes,
Right.
and it's based off, I believe, off of the income
So
in the area.
It sounds like you're gonna be willing to make less of a profit than the current leaseholder.
Yeah, and that was kind of like, the deal that I tried to make between, with the town, but also with CHAPA, right? So obviously, by me assuming it, right, you kind of gotta give and take a little bit. And, for me, I see the impact that I could have by increasing the affordable units, right? So I was pretty quick to agree to it.
And so you're willingly undertaking what sounds like some deferred maintenance? Is that part of the?
Exactly.
And because you're young and strong, you can handle that?
Yeah.
And just to clarify, in the 4 additional affordable units would also remain elderly units?
Yeah, every unit in that property will remain age restricted.
What's that based on?
As far as I think it's actually I think it's a deed restriction that
Is that on the
restricts it
deed?
to elderly. It's either 55 and older or 62 and older. I'd have to double check, but that is going to transfer with the property indefinitely.
That would be as a deed restriction in the land records.
Is that for everyone who lives there or at least one person?
For the people who qualify for the affordable units, they would be capped at a certain amount to maintain eligibility for those units.
Right, so, but one person has to be over the age of,
Yeah, so as far as I know, everybody in the complex has to be above that age restriction.
okay. Okay,
So in other words, you can't have a grandmother with children, so to speak.
well,
I would have to double check.
How that works.
Can't stop.
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but as far as I know, everyone that like is on the property has to be elderly. Now, most of the units are one bedrooms, so I really don't see how an elderly person with a bunch of kids can end up there, because that can also disrupt the residents as well. People kind of like the quiet, so as of right now, there's no kids and there won't be any. As far as I'm concerned, as we move forward, just kind of maintain the status quo that is there right now.
So I had a different question. The piece of the charter is here in our packet as well, and is this not a covenants of the lease that requires the special town meeting, or we don't see this requiring a special town meeting?
We're not changing the terms of the lease.
It's just transferring the
Okay, so that doesn't count as a covenants to put a different person on the lease?
No, I mean, that's an assignment. We're not changing the terms of the lease. We're not redrafting the lease, which would trigger some additional approvals.
But adding the additional affordable units can be done on the land records without doing that?
Yeah, it's not represented in the lease itself. It would be a filing on the land records as an actual deed restriction that then carries forward.
Because we're the owner, we would initiate that. The town of Woodbridge would initiate the land.
Well, I mean,
lease.
Tyler could probably, with his attorneys, he's gonna have to file these things on the land records anyhow. I mean, we don't,
The town clerk.
we could facilitate it with Tyler and his attorneys, and then we could look at it and say, yep, that's, that. What we do with our other towns, when, there's developers coming in, and it's typically for housing authority properties where a town may actually own the property or the land underneath. And, in those instances, it's not the town that carries the affordability and the plan forward. It's the property manager who then has to file, make these filings on the land records. So it's incumbent on the actual property manager, the person who's operating the facility. And, we're here just to check to make sure it all looks good before it gets on the land records. Because that is a requirement for us to act, for these units then, to get added onto that 10% state affordable
Right.
units.
And once they're on in the land record, that's it. They're there for, is it 20, 30 years?
Yeah, once they're on, they're on.
Right.
The restriction needs to be at least for 30 years, I wanna say. It's either 30 or 40. But, yeah, that carries through for any future owners then.
Okay. Thanks.
Mika, the complaints that are in the file that you
The
found.
file.
The hidden file. Are those being addressed to the current person with whom we have the lease, who now wants to turn over the mortgage to
Correct.
To
It's
Tyler.
been the same owner for the entire period of time, so
And they are the remote managers of this property, I assume.
I could say the complaints were shared with the current owner and were met with varying degrees of success. Some were satisfied, some were not. But we definitely shared them all with the current owner,
Right.
current operator.
But there isn't an on-site person. It's all the remote.
Or a property manager?
No, there
Yeah,
is, I think there
property
is a
manager
property,
there.
isn't there a property?
No, there's no one on site.
She's not on site.
No, because it's such a
Yeah.
small property.
Yeah.
Logistically, it doesn't make
Sure.
sense to have somebody on site.
Understood.
Yeah.
But I believe his office is in Cheshire, so he's not like too far.
and your offices are in Shelton, correct?
Yes.
So, and that will continue, if someone's got a complaint, they're still gonna come to the town, and the town is gonna
I would assume they go to him
relay it.
first.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly
so we
right.
have a 24/7 maintenance line that you can call, right, and you can put any concerns, any maintenance. And then we actually have in-house maintenance techs that will go out to the property, address the issues. So I know some of the concerns were the Comcast, some issue with Comcast, right? I've already talked to John, the owner, current owner, and we've worked through those. I know another concern was the washer and dryers. You know, we've already discussed a plan for that, so, you know, obviously the goal is to address the concerns, you know, as they come in. And obviously the goal would be they bring it to us before they bring it to you guys, because we're the ones that are gonna be able to do something right away, so.
And based on the ones that we've seen, it's been as a result of not being able to get satisfaction as a
Right.
reason for them to come up to us.
Correct.
That makes
So-
sense.
So the bank has vetted this for the transfer of the mortgage.
Yeah, so it's backed by Chaffa. Chaffa has fully approved me and my company.
Okay.
So the last thing on their list is approval from you guys.
Have we done any additional looking into this, or just looked at what the bank said, or whatever that is?
We haven't spoken with Chaffa specifically.
Okay.
That's the one thing that came up today, and somebody asked me, and no, we have not, unless Tony.
I haven't, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've not
and as
spoken
far
with
as
Chaffa.
Chaffa
Not
goes,
recently.
we're assuming the loan, right? So there's no new bank financing on it. Everything is staying exactly the same. So same amount of debt that's on it, same interest rate, same payment schedule. So really, I'm just stepping into his shoes. And, yeah, so.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, so, you know, we kind of, but that's the thing, right? So it's like they're working with me, and that's why I'm proposing the additional low-income housing tax credit units, right? So it's kind of like a win-win for everyone.
And this is a lease that continues through, is it 2040?
50.
50?
2050.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's about 30 years left.
Okay.
I won't be around.
This side, everybody? Okay. And I believe what you need from us is to concur on the letter that's being proposed.
Yeah.
And we need, anything we do is gonna be contingent upon, anything we have to write up from a legal standpoint,
Sure.
okay? And the one other suggestion I'll make is I'd feel best if one of us spoke with Chaffa,
Absolutely.
you know, just to
I
make
think
sure.
I actually forwarded you their information of who I'm in direct contact with, like the senior director who kind of did all the underwriting and approvals.
Okay.
So I can resend
I
her
appreciate
information to you. I think her name is Elizabeth.
That'd be great.
So I can re-forward that to you guys so you guys can just have that internal dialogue. But yeah, that's no issues.
So if we do make a motion, it would be contingent upon that as well. So, do I have a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you wanna make the
I'll just make the motion. I'll make a motion that we approve this contingent upon discussion with Chaffa and caring for the written portion, a written document as relates to those commitments that you've made as relates to the properties.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion here?
Is this something that we're authorizing you to sign a document, or is there no signature needed?
There will be a signature needed on the assignment. And then in terms of this side agreement, memorializing the other representations, then, yeah, I mean, that should be an authorization unless, you know, the
Right.
board wants to see the actual formal document.
So maybe our motion should be that we authorize the first selectman to execute the
point.
documents upon the,
And there will be the documents that'll need, and authorize me to sign the necessary documents related to related to this.
so I think
But
I'm gonna
in
make
addition to?
that motion. If you withdraw yours, I'll make that motion,
Please.
because otherwise you're authorizing yourself.
Yep. That
So I'll make
sounds
that
good.
motion
Thank
to
you.
authorize the first selectman.
Or else,
Go ahead.
I'll second it.
More questions, discussions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Motion
much for the
carries.
opportunity. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for all the
for-
information and appreciate it, and look forward to you being a great attendant for those people who need
Thank
it.
you very much.
Yes.
And I will also resend you Elizabeth's information so you guys can connect and have that dialogue.
Look forward to it.
So,
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
A long night.
Time
Our
well
next
spent.
item is actually number 7. We'll now move to
It's
number
like-
7, is the Administrative Officer and Director of Finance report.
thank you. I'll go through this pretty quickly. We have a surplus of a little over $1 million through March of 2024. That leaves us about 15% of our annual expenses. Our fund balance is about 15% of our annual expenditures. It's no surprise some of the surplus generating revenues include our interest income at $390,000, and I think rates will probably stay for a little while longer, so we should probably continue to generate some additional revenue on that. Intergovernmental revenue is surplus of $230,000, mostly generated by the municipal revenue sharing account. Cost of living adjustments on the expenditure side, they were awarded at 2.5% for AFSCME and non-union personnel. There is a funding request for part of that this month. The remaining departments that are not in that request I'm monitoring as they may be able to fund those adjustments within their budget. Oftentimes it's due to vacant positions or injuries or other issues that may raise a surplus in that department. Police department, I'm thinking I'm more comfortable that they should be able to cover the $90,000 deficit that we have due to the elimination of the school resource officer, the police officer as a school resource officer at the elementary school. I'm pretty confident unless they have some unusual activity in the next few months, they should be okay. Hopefully not. Our benefits have surplus of $110,000. Most of that's generated from the restructuring of the retirement plan up at the state. We do have a slight shortfall in healthcare, mostly due to coverage changes. And finally, Amity did reduce our March operations by $462,000 from their surplus from 2023. So those are the major items for this month.
Tony, in regard to the investment income, if there's a sense, I know you have an investment committee that looks at this periodically.
So the investment committee mainly focuses on trust funds because a lot of the investments that we can use for general funds are very restrictive. And but the trust funds are not restrictive. So they mainly focus on our trust funds.
So do we do anything that, in terms of managing the investment income, if we foresee something that we think would have a negative impact on it?
We, it's just, I work with the financial advisor that helps us with it. And another part of our investments are in the state treasurer has an investment fund that a lot of towns and state money invest in. It's called it's called STIF, or this short-term investment fund by the state treasurer. That's where we have some funds invested in as well, some CDs.
Thank you.
We have a mix.
Didn't I read that that's been doing better? That particular fund was doing better?
It is. It is. It's in 5.5% roughly.
After years of doing
doing terrible, right?
Sometimes those reports that come out in the paper really spur a little bit of action on the part of
It was maybe
part of
0.5% for a while,
Yeah.
1/4%.
Well, when they come out, what were they, 50th out of 51 in
Yeah.
return? So
The most recent treasurer has been doing better. The performance has been much better.
Yeah. Somebody shines a light on it, I'm sure that's going to happen. That's good, though. That's good for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
You want to move with the funding requests?
Yes.
Do we need to say anything about this, or do you want me to move ahead with the motions on?
So the first funding request is 2324-16. It's the first one you have, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's we get this annually. This is a $3,000 donation from the Bethwood Baseball League for we use it to provide porta potties, temporary toilets, and overtime for league tournaments that the league likes to have on primarily on the Acorn Hill fields. So they donate the funds that are that we use to help run those tournaments.
I'll make a motion to approve the line item transfer number 2324-16 of the $3,000 donation from Bethwood Baseball League for cost of providing temporary toilets and overtime related to league tournaments.
Second.
Additional questions?
I'm just wondering, is there a cost associated with the Bethwood Baseball League for participants, or is that a free thing?
I'm not sure.
How do you?
No, you pay to.
You pay.
Yeah.
So, is there an opportunity for some of that funds to be used to cover this type of cost?
So that's what they're doing. They're donating
Oh.
their own funds to us.
Oh, they're all, oh.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's late and I'm hungry, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is like,
Well, it's not quite, it's getting late.
I do have a snack drawer.
Oh my God, you're the best, thank you. All right, apologies. So no, I don't have anything else to
So
say.
then you can vote now. Call.
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next is 2324-17 for $15,000. This is a request from Warren Connors in Public Works. Warren Connors is not only our Public Works Director, but he's our tree warden. So it's his responsibility to identify any dead or dying trees that need to be removed along the roadside that can be hazardous or to be trimmed. And he's identified that he needs an additional $15,000 in his budget to remove additional trees through the end of the year.
I'll make a motion to approve the line item transfer number 2324-17 of $15,000 to fund additional tree work to remove or trim dead and dying trees.
I'll second the motion.
And this is coming from basically the kind of light winter we had, this is
Correct.
sand and salt?
That's correct.
And we're
Right.
putting it towards
Correct.
taking care of trees.
Right.
Nice.
Any,
Just out of curiosity, to my understanding, there is no tree inventory where there's like a database and priority based on data to make these decisions. Tree management decisions.
He probably knows every tree by heart.
He probably
I'm
does.
sure that he does, and I've seen some trees flagged, like on Sperry Road too.
Right, but
And
I'm not sure he has an
but-
extensive tree inventory.
Okay.
I
from the
would- I
database,
would
he
say.
certainly has indicated, we've talked about we've talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
I know that he works very closely with UI and some of the utilities in regards to some of the things that happen. They probably have a little bit more of a database, but as far as I know, he does not. But I can,
It'd be
I'll check
nice
on
for
it.
the town to create an urban tree canopy inventory and plan. I'm sure Warren would appreciate that and appreciate me bringing this up,
Well,
but
what I was gonna say is I'll reach out to you to see exactly how
Sure.
how we would go about that
Yeah.
type of thing.
yeah.
But by all means, I'm happy to bring it up with him.
And something we can point to in the strategic plan document as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Good
So that's
points,
another,
Steve.
yeah.
Under sustainability, maybe? Environment?
Sure. Yeah.
Conservation?
Yeah,
Could
we could
even be
assign
public
it right
safety,
out.
really, and
It's all-
public
yeah.
health. It's like it crosses all the.
Yeah,
It's just as the conservation, should go out and document every tree.
Okay, so there was a second for
There was a
that?
second.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor? Motion carries, unanimous?
Okay, the next is 2324-19. Did I do 19? Oh, I skipped one, I'm
16,000,
sorry.
yep.
24-18 for $6,000. So this is a contingency request to fund the first phase of revaluation so that Marcia can begin that process and that should can be done on time. Revaluation has to be filed, the grand list has to be filed by February 1st. And so by doing this, we can get the grand list filed on time. We won't need to file an extension. And we have reduced the capital budget by $6,000 for next year. So it's essentially what we did was we reduced the capital budget next year by $6,000 and we're funding it this year.
This year.
So we can start earlier so we can get done on time.
Smart.
So I'll make the motion to approve line item transfer number 2324-18 of $6,000 for phase 1 of the fiscal year 24 revaluation.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor? Aye? Motion carries. Thank you.
2324-19 is a funding request for $62,121. This is the funding request I spoke of earlier, which is to fund the cost of living adjustments of 2.5% for AFSCME in ASME union and non-union personnel. This does not include some departments, including the building official, public works, waste management, building maintenance, recreation, parks, human services, and library. You'll notice those are all bigger departments, with the exception of the building official. And so I'm monitoring those departments, and I'm hopeful that they can hopefully cover most of, if not all of, the increase. There's also a severance pay in the tax office in that transfer also for an employee that left.
And this is out of the.
Out of contingency.
Finance contingency.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve line item transfer number 2324-19 of $62,121 to fund the cost of living increase for ASME union and most non-union personnel.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, and the last is 2324-20, and this is was a request of the library director and maintenance, and that is to rekey the library. Now that we have electronic locks, I think there's a concern that the library was last keyed from 1999, and that the number of keys out there is not exactly accounted for properly. So I think the idea here is to rekey it and to use just the electronic locks for entry into the library. And the library is able to fund that from within his budget, so we thought it was a good opportunity to do that.
I'll make the motion to approve line item transfer number 2324-20 of $4,585 to fund the rekeying of all the locks in the library building.
I'll second.
Any additional questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay.
That does it for line item transfers.
Next is the indicators. Right.
Yeah.
So the next agenda item, I'll go through pretty quickly, but I thought it would be helpful for you to see because there was some discussion about our fund balance, and so I wanted to just sort of bring to your attention some information here. So the town of Woodridge is a AAA rated community, which means that our bond rating is to AAA. It's the highest rating you can get, and it's reflective of a number of factors, including financial factors and wealth indicators, and there's a whole host of indicators that are used to identify those communities. And there are other communities, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 other AAA communities. And so I wanted to just present to you where we sit in with some of these communities and some of these major financial indicators. So you can just sort of get a gauge as to, the first one, of course, is undesignated fund balance, the percentage of revenues. As you can see in this group of communities, we're sort of right in the middle. There are some as low as 9%, some as high as 20%. It's sort of important to sort of see some trends with this information, and so you get sort of an idea of how we sort of fit into this group. As you can see, Weston, which is a size of similar to ours, their fund balance is 20% of their of revenues. But when you go to comparing equalized grand list or grand list information, you can see that we're close to the bottom on equalized grand list per capita. So while we
What does that mean?
it means that if you divide the population into your grand list, you get grand list per capita, and it's one of the indicators that Moody's uses to sort of evaluate the community. And not any one particular one is a problem to have it on the low side. You sort of have to take them all into context, but it just sort of gives you an idea. As you can see, Greenwich is of course the highest because of their size of their grand list and the value of their properties.
So is this an indication? I didn't fully understand
It's
the
sort of,
explanation.
it's like a gauge or a checklist which the communities are evaluated for fiscal health.
Sure, okay.
An indicator is
It's
not
like
a
an
bad
indicator.
word. Yeah, an indicator is
Yeah.
not a bad word.
No, I understand, but that's what all of these figures are representing.
Right.
This specific equalized.
Oh, okay, so this specific one takes the value of your grand list, divides it by the population. So you sort of gives you a,
Like
grand
whatever
list
measure
amount
is
per
there.
person.
Okay.
It's so you can sort
So-
of gauge, the value of and the strength of your grand list.
So if you have a lower ranking,
It means
there's
that
a
your grand
greater
list is lower.
burden. Oh, no, your grand list is lower.
Right, which
So the
means
burden
greater-
per.
person is higher.
Per household is, okay,
Correct.
thank you.
The next is debt service as a percentage of operating expenses. As you can see, we do very well here, and we've done it. So some of these indicators are easy for us to control. Some are difficult, but you can control, and others you cannot, are very difficult to control. So this is one that we've done a good job of controlling. You can see we do well here. This means that our debt service is on the low side compared to some other communities. Next is debt per capita. That's basically the amount of debt we have per person. Again, you can see we're sort of right in the middle of the group. Our debt indicators are actually we do well with, except
This one.
for net debt burden as a percentage of your grand list. Again, it's just in the grand list ones, this one is the opposite of, this means that you have a higher debt. This is your debt as a percentage of your grand list.
So, Tony, you had previously told us when we looked at the mountain of debt slide
Right.
in the budget, that we were coming off debt and
Right.
we had a low amount of
We
debt.
do, yeah, we still do.
But-
Because if you look at our debt per capita, we do well, percentage of our budget, we do well.
Right.
But then when you compare, so what this shows you is that some of these towns with higher debt levels have much higher grand lists.
Right.
That's what it shows
So,
you.
in terms of taking on more debt, this is one signal that says, we don't want to make this worse.
Well, yeah, but this is one
It's just one of many.
right?
Okay.
This is one that's specifically associated with the grand list. In
Correct.
other words,
I think it's more of a statement on the grand list than it is on your
the
debt.
debt, exactly. In other words, because our grand list isn't significant, or hasn't grown significantly, or
Right.
it's not significant as compared to the others in these other communities, our debt per person is greater. So,
And I just want to add,
the over,
oh, no,
I'm sorry,
please.
I was just gonna say, the overall debt was, I think the previous slide, when you look at the overall debt, we're in pretty good shape from a town perspective in terms of how much.
A good indicator is if you go two slides before, you'll see
Yeah.
Greenwich is 10% debt service is their percentage of their operating expense. But then when you compare it to the grand list, they're the lowest because they have such a high grand list.
The grand list is
Right.
so huge.
Right.
And
So they can
is it
run
also because their grand list is also more diversified? Like they have commercial and.
I was just saying, it's just based on total value.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's your ability to tax, if you have your value is greater on the grand list, the burden is less.
And
if you
from a
have
real
higher.
estate standpoint, you can look at it from the cost of a colonial house, 4-bedroom colonial house in Woodbridge compared to a same 4-bedroom colonial house in Greenwich. The value of that house is greater.
Is greater,
So
yeah.
collectively, everything like that is much greater.
Have you seen the houses
But you
in
can also
Greenwich?
take on, you could take on more opportunities if you have a higher grand list and you know that you could bring in revenue, so like that's what
Right,
this is.
correct.
That's
That's
correct.
what this is showing
That's
as well.
correct, that's what shows you, right?
Right.
Right.
And
Just
Tony,
a
one
few
other
more here.
question though, the equalized, it's saying the equalized grand list,
So,
that's,
Equalized means that because everybody does revaluation at different times, the state takes all the towns' grand lists and they adjust for market values and market conditions, and they try to make it so that those are the values at that time.
right, so it's not necessarily gonna change when we do our reevaluation.
Right, because
It's already been equalized.
it's already been equalized, right?
Okay,
Right.
all right,
Which is a
know.
better thing to compare because then everyone's sort of at the same.
Right.
yeah.
Per capita income, these are just a couple of wealth indicators. Per capita income is one. Median home value. It's sort of interesting that there's a bunch that are sort of right around the same and then it kind of goes up.
When was this? This
20
was
August
2023?
Some of it's from, 2023. It's a state, if you go on the state OPM website,
Okay.
there's, it's actually quite interesting. It's called the Municipal Fiscal Indicators. And it gives you a whole bunch of information on all different towns, all different metrics, all different, these are just a couple. And it gives a lot of information comparing
Right.
different towns. Unemployment rate, and finally tax collection rate. So, just a little information I thought would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks,
I reviewed it with the
Tony.
Board
That
of
is helpful.
Finance, and I thought maybe it would be,
That's great.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
okay.
All right. Onward. Mr. Belmonte, is there anything that you would like to report to us?
The only thing that I'll just say to the board is that I've been looking into the question that came up at the board's last meeting when we were talking to the library folks about what the plans were going to be for Earth Day. And one of the requests was to have alcohol service, a beer garden outside, if we remember that. And so the discussion was, okay, well, we think we have a policy and we gotta check our ordinances to see how that's lined up. And by the way, we used to be a dry town. And when I heard you guys say that last month, I said, ooh, okay, well, this is gonna get a little more complicated. Because I have been dealing with this almost exact same situation in Wilton, which was also previously a dry town. And the problem we have here is for towns that were at one point completely dry and have then taken subsequent action to not fully open up the floodgates, just allow certain categories of state-issued permits. That's where we are right now. There's about, as of 2003, I think was the last, and to do this, you need a whole townwide referendum to further expand the types of alcohol that can be served in town under these state-issued permits.
Did we do that at one point and it failed?
You did.
Yeah, I thought so.
In 1935 was when beer permit was first allowed, beer. Then in 2003, you guys opened up to like 5 or 6, I mean, pretty consistent, like restaurants, grocery beer, package stores, hotels and cafe permits. Those are permit types that are specific under state law. There's about 50 more permit types. The permit type that would apply to this library, which is a non-commercial entity, there's this temporary non-commercial permit that the state offers, which is not included in our allowed list right now. So I am still in the process of taking a microscope to those types of permits that we do allow and seeing if we can get there, if we've already authorized this type of permit that has come out 20 years later. So that's all. I'm trying to find a way for us to get there. If we can't, then the library might not be able to sell beer.
But we authorized beer in 1935.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm saying there might be a way for me to get there based on that broader, yes, we're gonna allow beer, but the state law is tricky and it's the language in it boxes us in a little bit in terms of process. So that's why I just wanna be cautious that, if we're gonna do this, we do it the right way. So.
I'm not sure if it makes a difference. I'm sorry?
No, please, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it makes a difference or not. The beer would be, from what I understand, the beer is provided by NEPCO, which is a local establishment, if you will. So I don't know if it helps at all if they're the ones who are providing it.
I believe they donated it for it's donation for this beer garden that they're trying
Well,
to
that's
put in.
so nice of them.
Is it their permit doing, because sometimes when you have,
That's what I'm wondering, is if them as a restaurant, if they're the ones who are doing it, and then instead of it being the library,
Well,
then it becomes on town property, but I'm just,
yeah, that's another possible way to get there if an actual entity in town that has an existing permit, if there's a way that we can do like a temporary license for that limited purpose, we might be able to get there that way as well.
Thank you.
They do serve in town, so they have a permit.
Sure.
I mean, could we, but we can never serve wine in town? Not to be the
No,
Italian,
no,
but like.
So it's as of 2003, it's much broader, and
Okay.
so the town allows, I'm not trying to take up a ton of time here, but any type of alcohol in restaurants, basically, groceries can sell beer, package stores can sell whatever. There's something called a cafe permit, which is
Okay.
like local brews and some food mixed in. So no, the town is not just limited to beer at this point, but the types of permits, state issued permits that are allowed to offer beer for consumption in town are a limited list.
I see.
So we're trying to find a way.
But beer, but is that also true for other forms of alcohol, types of alcohol? Like, is there a limited list of types of permits for wine, for?
Some permits are specific for like breweries, which are limited to manufacture of beer. Some are specific for like wines and ciders. Those aren't the ones that the town has currently authorized are not specific
okay.
to one alcohol type.
Thank you.
Can I
I
ask
do
just,
believe we found a way for people to come out to referendum though, if we had to bring this.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well,
We also have a,
I'm not sure based on 2003.
yeah, but that's an on-site, that's not,
yeah.
that's their establishment, that's Savino. I mean, in terms of process, it was just because we have the annual town meeting coming up, is that a place where something would end up, on a vote, so that we can make any changes? Or is this an ordinance thing? I'm just wondering where the place for the next step, especially because we have the annual town meeting coming up in May.
Right. So we're actually doing it at the annual town meeting in Wilton. So I think that is a potential option. I mean, folks are gonna be coming out anyway. We might have to scramble a little bit in terms of notice to
Right.
get it done in time, but
The next agenda item.
that's all I have.
The event is on the
Thank you.
27th. Can we don't want us to run forward with something that shouldn't happen, obviously, but that's just a consideration. Definitely appreciate you bringing that up, and, but we probably need to move quickly on it.
Yeah, understood.
Thank
Keep
you.
everyone posted.
Thank you very much. All right, next item is the call of the annual town meeting, set by charter 3-2 on May 20th, 2024.
May 20th, yeah.
In accordance with the Charter of the Town of Woodbridge, Article 3, Section 3-2, I move that the Board of Selectmen hereby vote to notify all electors and citizens qualified to vote in a town meeting of the Town of Woodbridge that the annual town meeting will be held on May 20th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. in the Amity High School cafeteria. I'm sorry?
24.
24. Did I say 23? Okay. 24 on May 20th, 2024 at 7:30 in the Amity High School cafeteria, 25 Newton Road, Woodbridge, Connecticut, to consider and take action on the funding year 25 budget as recommended by the Board of Finance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
And Mika, we're doing it at Amity because we're under construction in the gym?
That is
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
It's just gonna be a
So
little
this is a
confusing 'cause
different
we're doing
site for
preliminary
those-
budget there.
Yeah. We'll have time, they won't have started by April, so we can do the preliminary budget in the gym, but they will have started construction by the time May rolls around, so we did have to move it in the cafeteria is where we're gonna have it.
And
You said cafeteria or the? Cafeteria.
Yeah,
High
high school
school
the high school cafeteria,
In the cafeteria,
in the cafeteria.
okay.
Mhm.
in the motion we just
Sounds
did,
bad.
which specified the budget, other town business that we might need to
Such as what
do
we
at that
discussed?
point isn't in the budget,
Items
do we,
proper to come
As I
in
was
for a
reading it,
town
I was
meeting.
thinking the same thing based on our just
do
current
we
discussion.
ever add that whatever, other town business that
As-
may,
As appropriate.
as
to come before-
appropriate?
That's a legal question.
Nick, should we indicate as, that if we wanted to consider additional items for the town meeting, the way I just read the motion, it does specify to take action on the funding year 25 budget. I'm just looking to see if I can amend that to say, or other town business, to include anything else we might want to consider at the town meeting.
I think the call has to be set pretty definitively.
Mhm.
And if we're thinking here, like we were just discussing, maybe we
Right.
add something on about the alcohol piece, as I'm thinking about this a little bit more, that may not work for us here, because the Wilton Charter is a little bit different, that gives the board a slightly different path to get there. So I would just set it as firmly as you can right now for purposes of the budget.
Very good. Then the motion as stated is on the floor.
Dave seconded.
Dave seconded. Is there any additional questions or comments? Very good. Take a vote. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. The next agenda item is state affirmations to adopt and authorize the first selectman to sign. These are affirmations that I was already given authorization to sign early when we took office, only because I was different than Beth. But it occurs every April is when they're supposed to be signed. So this is the one for the normal turnaround. And this state affirmations include the fair housing policy, fair housing resolution, affirmative action policy statement, Title VI equal opportunity statement, ADA notice and grievance procedure, and conflict of interest.
I'll make a motion to readopt the state affirmations and authorize the first selectman to sign them.
I can second.
Questions?
Yeah, so are all these are all existing ones, nothing here is new, or just, didn't we do this already?
We did, yeah.
We did this
Yeah.
in January because I was replacing Beth. They had been in Beth's name and they needed to be in my name because I was taking
And
office.
then it just needs to happen.
And then this is a
again.
calendar, this is the annual full portion of it, correct? You're absolutely right. It was already done, but we have to do it again.
Got it.
Any others?
And we're okay to do this as a
I
group.
jumped, I jumped the
You
gun.
guys all got questions?
All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you. That motion carries. The next is the MMAC, Master Municipal Agreement for Construction Projects, DOT. Again, another document that needs to be authorized by the first selectman to sign.
I'll make that motion to authorize the first selectman to sign the master municipal agreement for construction projects from the DOT.
I'll second.
Any discussion, comments? All in favor? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to adopt a charge for a newly established fire storage and training facility building committee. Just as in way of an update, and I'll take you back to when the our firehouse was, the new firehouse was constructed. It was constructed with the intent of putting an additional auxiliary, if you will, storage facility on that same property behind where the firehouse is now. That was never done because the funding associated with that was taken up with some of the groundwork that needed to be done in order to make that happen. So we could not fund it, and we did have the old firehouse as a means by which to store what they needed with the environmentals that were required. And we've been using that ever since. At this point in time, we'd like to renovate the old firehouse into a community center, so we need to now look at that and move that material over where it was supposed to be from the time that the firehouse was proposed. So to that end, we've gone out to bid and we've received a number of bids. We've also received a grant that would help us to fund this. And we'd like to leverage and use that grant in time for us to also leverage the funding or the grants that we received for the old firehouse, for the community center. So to that end, we felt that if we get the bids in, we'd like a group there specifically to manage the process from a building committee standpoint. So I believe you received the charge in your packages, and what we're looking to do at this point in time is to create and adopt the charge. We've created and adopt the charge for the building committee, for the fire storage and training facility building committee.
I'll make the motion to create and adopt the charge for the fire storage and training facility building committee as stated in the packet.
Is there a second? I will second the motion. Now discussion.
Yeah, when we make these committees, are there expiration dates? Like, or, like
There will be
when
an-
do the committees,
When the project ends.
and that's just inherent, that's assumed, or that's,
It's usually in the charter.
like, or does that need to be included in the charge?
We can include that in the charge.
I would feel more comfortable with
I
that.
have no problem with that. I think it's,
Thank
when the,
you.
wait, but sometimes the challenge is what is, for example, I'm thinking of Beecher Building Committee.
What's
What's
considered
considered
complete?
project completion, you know what I mean? So.
Maybe when the items are moved?
Tony, do you have a sense for what would be considered? You've gone through a number of these projects.
This particular project, I would say when this phase of the project is complete, with the grant funds and the,
Based on the contractor bidding, the bids that we.
Correct.
So when it's
Yeah.
complete by the contractor we select,
correct.
okay? We will add that,
I appreciate that.
not a problem. I think it's good and valid.
Saw that one of the charges we had of that committee is to come in at budget. What is the total budget for that? Do we know?
We're still sort of working on the fine details of that, but we should have that, hopefully.
So we'll have.
We were supposed to have, we wanted to have it tonight, but it's probably, it won't be till next meeting.
And so is that something we're gonna have to approve, the actual budget?
You'll have to approve.
Because we don't
the-
have one yet.
Well, you'll have to approve the contractor.
The bid.
You've approved the bid, you've approved the grant already. And so to the extent, I'm just not sure if there's gonna be, any funding issues or not. I don't think so, but
Okay.
there's also the fire association's donating some money. We're still working through that also for this project.
I'm just interested in making sure that when we establish a budget, we don't end up at
For-
2X or 3X or whatever it is we've been ending up
No,
with.
it's, just total, full disclosure, the grant amount is $500,000.
Uh-huh.
And from my perspective, that's basically what the town budget should be. We understand that sometimes the bids come in a little greater. The fire department has agreed, as Tony mentioned, to contribute some on their own. So we're waiting to see where the bids come in to see exactly where that comes up. There may be a need for some, marginal additional money, but if it's significantly higher than that, we've got a different problem.
Yeah.
So,
But that we would know when the bids came in and we
Correct.
would
Yes.
see,
Correct.
so that
Yes.
it,
so
Yeah,
prior to
yeah,
making any
but
decisions.
Yeah, correct.
It's in the charge to the committee. I just
Correct.
wanted to know
Yeah.
what we were, what we were charging them with, but
Yes.
we don't, it's close to that.
So,
It's right.
Okay.
It's gonna have to be close to that.
so the grant would be a 50% match?
No.
You're
No.
saying 500 and then the town would be 500?
No,
No.
no,
Okay,
it's
I
a
missed that.
$500,000 grant.
Yeah.
And then whatever the fire department opts to, or is in a position to contribute, and we're not certain what that amount is right now, but whatever that total is, we'll compare that to the actual bids that come in.
I see. Okay.
And we'll see
So we're
what.
trying not to really spend any money
We're
on
trying
this.
really
I mean,
hard
I
not
would,
to spend
I
any
think
money.
everyone would appreciate that. And are there any, or maybe this is,
But at the same token, this is something that's required.
Sure.
This is something that we should have done quite some time ago, if you will. But it's something that's required, so we have to really consider it from that perspective as well. And I, again, full disclosure, there is a limit on particularly the grant monies that we're earmarking for the community center. And you have to have that
Some-
contracted for before the end of this year.
Correct.
And we want to make sure that we can do that, and the only way to make that happen is really to have the first domino fall.
understood. I also just have a question about the training component of this charge. So, and please pardon my ignorance, fire department, if you're listening, there's a very big building behind us. I know truck engines take a lot of space, and there's offices, and the space is utilized. How big of additional space is needed to accommodate training? Do we have any idea of how big this building needs to be?
Let's see,
I would suggest that to the extent there are building questions on the size of the building and the training done in the building, it would be helpful to have the fire chief here for the training aspect of it. And if you're curious as to what would be stored in the building, what the building would be used for, I think that would be helpful.
and we can do all that at our next meeting.
Yeah.
This
But that's
is,
the May agenda.
Yeah, and today, we're looking just to get the building committee in charge, so then when the bids come in,
Understood.
they could start.
You had mentioned though they were previously approved for this, so I didn't know if, or it was like incomplete from when they
Correct.
built.
Correct.
I didn't know if at that stage, back then, if there were specifics associated with the expectations of the size and.
I think as I recall, just the downsizing of the whole project because it was way over budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct, it was 5,000 square feet that was removed from the project to
Right.
bring it.
So
over
this
to
might
what the
be
budget.
5,000
It's
square
not
feet.
quite that much, but.
That's
Not quite,
big
I thought it was
for
more like-
another very big building.
Well, we're trying to get them out of a bay and a half in the
No,
old
they're
farm.
trying to get them out of the entire, they're not just in a bay and a half there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, that's what I was in the same place, Sheila, but, I did go over to the old firehouse to look exactly what, and they're using that. The only thing they're
So
really
that's
not
the
using very
storage.
much.
That's the
is-
storage we have to provide.
And Mika, they've culled through what
Yes.
doesn't.
There's,
okay.
and we've also looked at what could be stored elsewhere.
Yeah.
And doesn't need environmentals, things of that nature, so, we're making every effort, and the chief is certainly working with us, and with the understanding that there's limited budget here, there's a limited budget here. So, they're certainly, it's a challenge, but I think we can get where we need to get to.
And Mika, you spoke a little bit to the timeline, but I was gonna ask a similar question on budget and on time. I think that with the creation of this, we should embed this into the strategic plan as well. It's yet another facility
Okay.
project that's there. And in that case, we're trying to put rough timelines on
Right.
everything, so that
It's a good point.
information
And that way
will
we
be
can,
helpful.
we can also
Yeah.
put the times that we wanna make sure we follow up on it
Yeah.
to assure that
Yeah,
it is
to
there.
get a sense, because you're saying
Yep.
progress reports to the
Yep.
Board of Selectmen, we could schedule them.
And so this is temperature controlled storage, so
It-
it's an energy cost for the town, utility cost for the town,
Absolutely,
okay.
yes, it is.
Cause not all storage is temperature, so
No, I
I'm
agree.
just,
And it would have been a much easier situation had they, but some of what they need to have temperature control.
yeah, and there's not room in their current building.
And there's
In the
not
new
room.
building.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And by all means, I'll make the offer, if you're so inclined to do so and you have some time, I'm happy to take you over to the old firehouse with the chief and see if the chief can make it
Yeah.
to go over and, because it's kind of I had to see it myself, to really
Yeah.
appreciate it, so,
Is there an old fire engine in there?
there is an
There
old fire
There
engine.
is.
There is an old fire
It's
engine.
antique.
Can
I
we sell
believe.
it?
It's an antique.
That's a
Make-
good
make
question.
some money?
Can we sell it? Like, why do
It's
we
there.
need an
It's the
antique?
association.
Okay,
not our
I see,
association.
okay.
But we have talked to them about where it should reside in terms of room, space, that type of thing there.
And-
Oh, God,
No, I'm hogging the mic.
I was gonna let you finish, it's okay.
I'm sorry, it's more, again, I know this is the charge to make the committee, so I'm a little off topic here, but the placement of this, is that already determined?
Yes.
Yes.
It's going where it was always supposed to be.
And does that require clearing land or like
Already.
parking area?
There's a foundation currently in place. And it's already gone through inland wetlands and.
Oh, so there's a foundation, so we know the footprint. We
Correct.
know, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if the size, based on the budget, will be the whole footprint.
I
So that's
see.
why it's,
Okay.
we'll have all the information once we have the bid information, so I can tell you by the next meeting, we'll be very specific. And as we mentioned, we'll ask the chief to attend, so if there's additional questions.
All right, thank you.
If we feel it's
All right,
necessary,
Maria.
if you feel like we have enough information, then we'll go from there.
Things never go quite according to plan.
I agree.
We did, when that was built, they poured the foundation for it,
But that's what they used all the money on.
Which-
As a matter of fact.
Probably
but
needs to
that
be
turned out to
redone.
be insufficient, so they had to redo it. So
Correct.
we've already bought one foundation for that.
I don't
but
even
now
wanna know, Dave.
that's what happens when you try to do things, when you try to change something and do it on the fly and make a plan that doesn't work out later on, it doesn't always.
There's a need, there is a need, based on just going over there and seeing it, so I can appreciate the need, and now it's just a matter of being
Get it
fiscally
done.
responsible in terms of what we can do and what we can afford, so.
Along those lines, because there will also be a continued cost to the town with running the facility, is the committee also gonna look at perhaps, alternative ways, green fuel, green energy, to run the building to defray some of those costs? And to be a little more environmentally friendly as well, or?
I have to say, Maria, I'm not certain on that. I haven't seen the specs
Okay.
with regard to that myself. I haven't looked at that, so, but I will. It's a very good and valid point, so. But I don't know the answer to that.
You gonna vote?
Additional? Anybody? I believe we had a motion and a second. All in favor with the contingency, and the motion does indicate that it's with the contingency as mentioned before in terms of.
Thank you.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is board and commission appointments. And the first one on here is for a 2027 position for the Recreation Commission.
Can I ask just a question, like a technical question first, because I wasn't sure, in the folder there was resumes and didn't say where they were coming from or what position they were for. Is that, maybe we could just,
Sure.
in future, get like maybe a cover letter memo of some sort so that we all know what's what?
That can, certainly,
I mean, I think
absolutely.
I can probably figure it out, but context clues, but,
No, it was very clear.
all right.
So, and before we get to the Beecher Building Committee one, which is C, I would like to ask the board to delay this one, because the individual who we had planned to nominate found out he can't, as a result of his position, his professional position, participate, or can't be a member, so we have to delay that one.
That's,
We just-
that's B, right?
I'm
that's
sorry,
D.
which
That's
organization? Oh,
C, building, I'm sorry,
Oh.
excuse me, that's the Zoning Board of Appeals, that's B. Thank you, David.
See, that's
And
where cover
can you
letter.
just remind me what,
Who's who?
is that minority or Democrat? Does it?
That was a elected position for
Oh,
the
an
Democrat.
elected.
That was a elected Democratic
Okay.
position. So,
Oh, yeah.
so we will be doing A and C.
Okay. That'll get me that much closer to dinner, Mika. Let's do it.
So do we have a nomination for the Recreation Commission, 2027?
To nominate.
Yes, I'll make a motion to appoint Sarah Bay Vilekar to the Recreation Commission for a 4-year term commencing January 1, 2024 and ending December 31st, 2027.
Is there a second? I will second the nomination. Are there any additional nominations?
I just had a quick question about the term. Is this the last of the vacancies for recreation?
For Recreation,
This was,
correct.
And are you able to specify political affiliation?
If I'm not mistaken, it is a Democrat replacing a Democrat position. In
So the-
Recreation, actually, we are.
Right.
is this, did someone resign, or is this, we just didn't fill it at the beginning?
Must not have been filled.
It was not filled, correct.
Okay.
No one resigned. It was
All
not
right.
a resignation.
Can we also get, once we're done with this, can we get the updated roster?
We
No?
have a
Oh,
few more to do, but yes, we
Yeah.
can get an updated roster.
It's never gonna be done. It's never gonna be
Working
done.
on the
You're
roster.
right,
She
you're
has the
right.
master one,
Good.
so I can ask Tony to send the most updated version out to the board, so you guys have it.
That'd be
I
great.
really
They
like the
were
last
updating.
one roster.
That's
Do you
that's the format she's keeping. Yes, we voted. There were a couple formats. I know you loved that format, so
And we did
Tony's
wanna-
working
So
on
some
that.
We
other
did need to
format?
update, the last
Oh,
one, we
11,
looked at
17.
political
Yeah.
affiliation wasn't as accurate as it needed to be.
Okay.
So, so we're
That's
she's
That
updating that.
yeah, okay.
But the one that we use and the one that will be sent out is pretty comprehensive, and it's complete.
Could you
I'm sorry,
just
we're way off
briefly
topic.
touch on this candidate's or nominee's rec interest or experience? Because I'm not questioning, but their background is all in chemical engineering. So just connect some dots for me, if you're willing.
My understanding, and this is one person who I haven't personally spoken with,
Okay.
most of the other folks I've personally spoken with, but their interests outside of their profession is what qualifies them, as well as their involvement in those types of activities. so.
It'd be nice to have
Allison, I
that
don't know if
type
you
of
have any more
stuff.
information on that.
Yeah.
He's one of the executive board members at the PTO. He helps to run the WHO and a lot of the programming.
Oh,
that the
great.
PTO provides at Beecher. He's a really, integral part of a lot of the PTO programs that run at Beecher.
Thank you.
He is a
Revitalization,
I mean,
so.
Halloween Hoot is the event of the year,
He's
so.
really involved in organizing all of those programming, so,
Thank you.
yes.
Additional questions? Hearing no additional nominations, make a motion, or the motion was made
And seconded.
and seconded. All in favor? It is unanimous, and it is getting late. The Beecher Building Committee,
I'll make a motion to appoint Lynn Piasek to the Beecher Road School Infrastructure Upgrade Building Committee.
So many letters.
Poor Maria. All eyes are on you.
I will second.
Could we make a longer time?
are there any additional nominations? Hearing none. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a Coop-Op recommendation for 38 Mylan Road.
That's how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Yes,
What a
Mylan.
thing.
Depends who you ask.
It does. It is my
Mylan is correct.
Right around
That
the
seems to
corner
be
from the
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but how do you know? Like, how do you know?
This is an item for discussion. I think you all received the package,
Yes.
which was rather complete and thorough in terms of it. And this is a piece of property that's in a residential area that was a residence, is now vacant. And we are looking at as we mentioned last time, we're looking at various properties in town to assure that we're optimizing what we're doing with the properties. This is a piece of property that, in addition to Coop-Op giving us our recommendation, they did check with a number of different, they checked with virtually all, most of the other commissions who would have any interest in this type of thing. And housing was the only committee that really responded to them, indicating that they felt it was a good opportunity for, a possible opportunity for, an affordable home type of thing. And so, any thoughts in regards to what we have here? This was not intended for us to take a vote, but rather for us to discuss, and we may be required to take a vote at another time, but there's a process when it comes to selling these things that are required, that I don't know that we have that we really outlined and put together and identified as being the way we do this. So until such time as we're sure about what we would do and how we would do it, this is more, bring it to everyone's attention, they're reviewing it, this is a conclusion they came up with, so that the next time we discuss it, if there was any, we're not doing the discussion all over again. So,
My questions are around how this would, how a transfer of any kind would function, and that's where I would ask legal,
and we have.
Well, right, so I would want to, I guess, hear.
So I wanted to just chime in to say that there had been recommendations for a process. It was a joint recommendation from Conservation Coop-Op to TPZ that was presented to the Board of Selectmen. Someone asked me if it had been adopted by the Board of Selectmen. I don't know that it was adopted, but it was presented. This is back during the last Plan of Conservation and Development. And this was the end of like a 4-page set of recommendations, but this was the property that had been in mind then. Couple of things so there was a recommendation that had to do with using the funds for maintenance of other town property, so directing the funds either into the open space fund or into a maintenance fund. Don't know if that's possible or not, and that's probably something that's gonna have to be researched. But the other thing that I wanted to ask about, Mika, you mentioned that there had been a house on the property, and that was my memory of it too. It's not in the documents that we got here, what happened to that property, or what happened to the house. But if there's a sense that the lot itself is grandfathered in some way from a previous structure that is no longer standing, I don't know how the grandfather works if the structure's not standing. So whether it's a buildable lot or not, I think is a legal question, right?
Well, they need to, so what the law says is if there's a non-conforming structure that now is not allowed and under the zoning regs, and that thing gets taken down, there technically is still some right to rebuild that. I mean, how long ago was it taken down? Do we know?
90s,
Yeah,
early
probably.
90s.
All right, so we're probably in good standing then. There has to be a showing of abandonment, the courts call it, and if a sufficient amount of time has passed after a knockdown like that, then generally we've been able to say, okay, that's an abandonment. You don't get the option now to rebuild this thing that you knocked down 30 years ago that now doesn't conform with the regs. So that's probably,
So not a buildable lot in that case.
I mean, if it's currently
Vacant.
inconsistent as a buildable lot with the zoning regs.
Yeah.
I mean, that,
So I don't know the value of going through the process of trying to sell it if it's not gonna be.
The process we have, I'm sorry.
I don't know what the, I mean,
This
it's a
is a
little bit
pro-
of money that we recoup. If the two adjoining neighbors wanted to
well,
split it,
if a neighbor wants it,
right. And then they wouldn't build on it because they can't build on it.
unless they merge it.
Yeah, I guess.
Why are we
The
thinking?
process,
Oh, no,
the,
go ahead.
the process is something that we have to put together regardless, and that's one of the reasons I want to bring this up, is so we have a reason to
Yeah,
go through the process.
and this was the test case we had in
And,
mind.
yeah, so this,
12 years
so
ago.
irrespective of what, what can be done, we need to have the process so that another property that does qualify, we're in a position to do something with it, if that's what we want to do. Your question, Andrea?
Well, I'm just wondering, there's a deed restriction, right, for this to be a single-family dwelling. Based on, I guess I'm wondering why this wouldn't be a buildable lot.
Too small.
Because of the lot
Oh,
size.
it no longer conforms to
Our normal.
Our,
And I don't know that if a zoning appeal would be considered because of the circumstances, I'm not sure. So,
cause it's, yeah, it's
I would
close.
I'll just add that there is another concept, that the courts have found called, if we're basically doing a taking here. So where there's a regulation that's put in place that says, okay, you can't use that property at all, you're done, it has no value, then there's a little bit of nuances there on potentially getting around the current, conflict with the zoning regs. So, am I hearing that we have some sort of draft policy already kicking around, or?
it's possible based on the previous, if a previous board had looked into this, we'll take a look to see what we can find.
Yeah.
And try to determine if there is something that's already been drafted, so we don't have to start from scratch. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that there's nothing that's been presented or provided, at this point.
Right. I guess the other question that I would have is the dollar amount of there was a tax lien against it, and the records of the Board of Selectmen, which don't expire and have to be kept. I don't know if anyone looked to see if it was mentioned, the dollar amount was mentioned there in whatever year it was.
The dollar amount, which dollar amount are you referring to?
So there was a lien against the property. This was a foreclosure, right?
It was, Pat, I know, either has it or is looking.
No, she said she didn't have it because
So-
she doesn't have to keep the records. But the Board of Selectmen records do go back, so I don't know if anyone checked them.
The town clerk was the source of the records we have.
Mhm.
Well, she would
That
have the
Coupop
Board of Selectmen.
apparently
That's where they went to,
investigated,
right.
but, obviously, I think we're talking more about what the policy might be if we wanted to take action on something like this, rather than, I guess I was, I looked at the charter that was included on page 5, I guess, where the purpose of Coupop, and their purpose was responsible for making recommendations on the proper usage of all publicly owned property in the town of Woodbridge. Well, that sounds rather interesting, but, this draws in things where, obviously a legal opinion may be needed about whether or not Coupop finding no obstacles, preventing Woodbridge from adhering to parcels intended in restricted use. Just because they didn't find it doesn't mean it isn't there, right? So that limits their possibility of recommending to us. But then also, we've been talking here about where many of our commissions overlap. And in page 3 of the CUPOP report, they're talking about their opinion about the proceeds from the sale and the tax revenue and and how it might fit in with the housing plan. So those things are clearly not CUPOP. Those are finance, those are housing, those are different things. So there is some overlap here that also suggests that our thinking about this whole thing, about our ordinances toward these, whether we need to amend them or combine or restrict or something, so that we don't have, areas that kind of bring us into like, what are we deciding? Are we deciding about finance? Are we deciding about housing? Are we deciding about public land? Are we deciding about whether or not the legal opinion needs to be taken? So I think it just gets complicated because some of these things are a little vague. So I'm not sure what we're going to consider, but I
Maybe
like the
for
idea about
clarity.
looking at what the previous boards might have done.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to do that regardless, just in terms of, if nothing else, identifying whether or not there's a process that we could leverage
Sure.
some information. I'm not sure about some of the other of what you said as far as,
Well, it struck me as being like, I understand that when we ask CUPOP to tell us what the proper use of something is, okay, that sounds fairly simple. But if they decide that we need money, so that they think something is more valuable to be sold because we need money, well, that's not, I don't see that being in their purview, because they aren't finance.
the motivation is what you're referring to. I think it is within their view to tell us
Okay.
that the property is available to be sold. If they say it's because we need money, that goes beyond their purview. It's more of an opinion type of thing. But I think their view, and I think what they've presented here, is that this is a piece of property that fits the bill for what they recommended. It could be used for housing, it could be used for sale, it could be and I would, as a commission, I feel that that's part of their charge. They're supposed to tell us
Right.
what could we use this for?
Well, I was trying to just follow when they told us what they unanimously recommended. And then that paragraph further described that it was their opinion that it would be only used for single-family dwellings because it was sold for that purpose prior to the limits that now exist that wouldn't make the lot usable. But it was their opinion that they were grandfathered, which wasn't really a legal opinion, at least not according to what they wrote to us. And
I guess
that also, it was their opinion that the proceeds would do something and the housing plan issue. So, and they did cite hearing from the housing committee, but, I don't, guess I'm not inclined to think that we ought to do anything with 38 Milan. We maybe ought to do some things.
And I'm inclined to feel like, I'd like to know what we can do with Mylan so as to determine whether or not there's something we should do with Mylan. That's the way I'm looking at it, and any properties, any of our properties, is identify what the particulars are on it, so that we can determine if there's a better use than what it is right now. Is there something more productive that we can do with that piece of property than what we're doing? And I'd rather them overstate I'd rather them overestimate or overstate their opinions. Ultimately, it's our decision. They're there to provide us information, which I think this does. This provides us information. Now we have, I think, enough information to determine some course of action. And in this case, it's, okay, if we wanted to sell a property, is there a process in place? Not to my knowledge. I don't see something that's easily referenceable. So that's something that's a gap. We need to do that because there may come a time where we want to sell a property. It might be the best thing to do. So we should have that in place. This piece of property in particular, there's a lot to it. They've given us the information. Now not today, but at some point in the future, we may have to sit here and decide what they recommended, what we want to do with it. And that's I think what their charge is. I think that, and I'm grateful for them for, you know, what they've done in terms of providing us the information. Understanding that all they're doing is providing us the information, it's up to us what we want to do.
So, Mika, is it your intention then that we take this recommendation and we first determine a process by which we would handle this or any other recommendation before we take next steps? Because I'm just
Absolutely.
cognizant of the fact that if
That
we
is-
engage the attorney, he's gonna start billable hours to look into it. So do we wanna take it by steps to say, first we need to do a little research about what the process might be, what that previous recommendation was about the process, whether that can be
That is my
enacted?
recommendation.
Okay,
That's exactly, my thing is, what this tells me is, one, what more about this property that I knew before. And it also tells me, well, if this certainly seems like a property that could be sold, so we need a process. So we have to develop a process. And that's internally as well as with the attorneys.
and I just want to reflect for a moment on what David said, especially with regard to, we had a couple of executive sessions earlier today. I would maybe want to caution that if we could clarify what kind of recommendations we want, wording of things, and maybe by saying, wait, we're looking at a process right now, so that we don't get additional recommendations from various commissions, not just CUPOP, that we're not ready to handle. We want to be.
Why wouldn't we be ready to handle it?
Well, I mean, the question of if we're selling this because we need the money, or we're selling it because, you know, it has something to do with our housing plan.
They're looking at a piece of property and giving us their assessment on the piece of property. What we ought to do with it is our charge, and that's part of our, we could look at our strategic plan and say, how does this fit into our strategic plan? Does it fit somewhere in our strategic plan?
And part of what we did talk about in the strategic plan, the previous board's strategic plan, and the ordinance committee last time around, we did look at the charge to this commission and a bunch of other commissions to say whether it needed to be clarified about, do things get assigned to commissions by the Board of Selectmen, or do the commissions act on their own initiative to do things? We didn't see a need to change the ordinance last time around, but it seems like there might be some clarity that is missing from that ordinance.
I just don't like, you know, the overlapping things. The work that was done on this is a lot. I mean, they did a tremendous amount of hard work, and it's good information. It's data that, as you pointed out, we need. But you know, I don't want commissions thinking that, oh, well, we got to go get a lawyer to figure this out, because I think, you know, if it gets to that kind of point, that's back on our table. So I guess I think they recommend this to us, and then we take it and move from there. I mean, we do what you suggested.
I completely agree. But I feel they should be commended for doing the work.
I think so too.
And in terms of, and presenting it, because I think that's exactly what their charge is to provide us with data, is to make recommendations, which in my mind, that's exactly what they've done.
Okay.
So, but that's not to say that we take that and we do with it what they recommend. That's exactly what our responsibility is, and that's what we need to discuss. So.
Right. So just for clarity's sake, the previous recommendation about a process forward was it was meant to be a unanimous decision jointly between Conservation and CUPOP before it would come to the Board of Selectmen. That would prevent it from coming if it wasn't unanimous, or it wasn't mutually agreed to.
You're saying that was a recommendation, but that wasn't
was a
adopted.
recommendation for a process, yes.
So our charter, because this was in our packet from the Lucy Street, but notes about the purchase and sale of real property, that there is a process. You might be talking about a potential additional layer, but as I read it in our charter, that if there's going to be any sale or purchase of real property owned by the town, it goes to, you know, if it's above a certain amount, the number is $50,000 or 0.15% of the total budget for the fiscal year. It needs to go to a special town meeting noticed by the Board of Selectmen. So as I understand, that's our existing process, unless there's something else.
But then the funds they go into the fund balance, because we also have policy about one-time revenue.
Right. So just in terms of finding out what our existing policy is in the charter, that's what I'm seeing. Maybe there's something additional, but do I understand correctly? And maybe this is where also we'd want to ask council. That's my understanding of the processes.
What is set forth in section 4-8 of the charter is our process, It also will include a couple additional steps that come from state law, a public hearing, certain notice requirements. But yeah, that is legally what our process is, and whatever the process, if we're going to like add to it or, do some of the stuff that we were discussing tonight, that doesn't necessarily have to require a charter change, but what ultimately transpires has to be consistent with that.
With the
section.
charter.
So we did do, remember the piece of property that we did sell, the little triangle near Fairgrounds in
Right.
Amity?
Yep.
So, and that went through the process you're describing?
Yeah, and that's the process for a sale.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, I think Mika was suggesting maybe how do we take this information and do something with it? Like if we're not gonna be actively looking through all of Woodbridge and selling things. I mean, that would be like, okay, we're looking at every property and decide we need to sell these things, we're gonna do that. That might generate different kinds of reports, but I don't know that this necessarily is going to end up engaging that particular part of what our process is. That only comes into effect if we decide that selling it is is optimization for that piece of property and is possible to even do as a building lot.
And that's the questions. In my mind, David, is the particulars as relates to assuring what we can do with it. From, a sale is an option.
Yeah.
Sale of the property is absolutely an option. It's an option that I may bring to the board,
Even if it's not a building lot, I guess we
Right.
could still sell it.
Exactly.
Right. You
Exactly.
could sell it to the neighbors of this,
Exactly.
potentially who might
Yeah.
wanna
Yeah.
have it
That
sold.
was the intention 12 years ago.
So,
It could
Either
become
way, that
it could
brings
become
it-
an ADU if they merge
Yeah.
the
Right.
properties.
So it sounds like we need, we have this as sort of an end point of a potential sale, but we need the additional layers before. What is our process for evaluating this? And also adding in so that we all know the notice,
Yeah.
any state regs that aren't noted in our charter, so that we can see as a board, what are the things we need to do when we're presented with something like this?
And legally what our options are for the use of the property at the moment. But, certainly there are some advantages to turning it back onto the grand list.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
And it's
as
surrounded
revenue
by
generators.
development. It's a good place for that, frankly, from whatever my opinion is worth, because that's what it is.
There's housing on that street.
Yeah.
that's what it was meant to be. That's
Yes,
what it was
yeah.
previously. So, we'll take a look at some additional detail as relates to any zoning type of recommendations.
The zoning regulations were included in the recommendation, and, I know Stephanie printed a whole bunch of stuff that's in there somewhere that it was grandfathered in. It is approved for building, it's buildable and grandfathered in as the zoning requirements.
Right, but the structure would have to be,
Because it was created
Remaining.
prior to that November 9, 2001.
yeah, but that's for a standing structure. There has to be something standing, right?
Well,
How it
if it,
works?
so, I mean, there's a little bit more homework we have to do that I have to do here, and just for full disclosure, this isn't like a separate billable file. This is something that's just gonna fall under the retainer anyway. But,
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's a
Just
couple
hours.
permutations to the questions that are being asked here.
Right.
And I think as we're all sitting here tonight, we might not be informed enough to make the right answers.
Appreciate it. With that in mind, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Is it motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn? Is that what we're at?
Yeah.
No, we have the consent
Are we
agenda.
at 19 yet?
We have the consent agenda, thank you. No, I'm sorry, we have number 17, request for use of town property for signage from the pool club. Just a little background on this. It was brought to our attention, I can't remember exactly how it was, but it was kind of arbitrary. At the department head meeting, somebody mentioned that there was an A-frame out in town property requesting, in a membership type,
Yeah, I've
promoting.
seen they're
prom-
around.
Yeah, but this was on town property, and we had been talking about approving an A-frame for Boy Scouts, for some others, and they said they didn't know that, they don't recall that that was, and I certainly didn't recall that that was on any of our agendas. So we called them and told them, no, that there's a process in which to put that type of thing on town property. They needed to submit an application for it, so they did. In the meantime, the people who were in the department head meeting had indicated, there was an indication that, well, this may not be the appropriate thing to put on the town property, since it, in a sense, conflicts with some of our programming, and it's a private, for-profit type of entity. So, the process is that they can apply, and it's up to us to decide whether we wanted to approve or not. And there was we did reach out to Rec, Human Services, Library, and,
It was Rec Human Services.
and Library,
Yeah, 'cause those
about,
are-
since it really was their programming, and their responses were in your package in terms of what their feeling was on it. So, at this point in time, it's on our agenda specifically to determine whether we want to approve this or not.
So, Mika, you're mentioning the A-frame policy, right? So there had been, is when you were on the Board of Selectmen, there had been a policy that was being drafted, and then, from my memory, never came back to be finalized and approved by the Board of Selectmen. And my memory of why it wasn't approved has to do with, you can't really approve A-frames where we have them, like in those islands by Blue Check and all that kind of thing, because the DOT doesn't allow it. So they told us we couldn't have regulations about that. But other than that, we had an A-frame policy draft that had been, in front of the Board of Selectmen prior, but it mentioned that organizations that have their own A-frames are supposed to go through the TPZ regulation for elementary signs. Is that the word? Do you guys know what that is? So there's a whole set of regulations.
Elementary signs, those are lawn signs, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, they are.
But A-frames were covered by that as well, from what we had figured out. All that to say, I don't know that this is for us to approve. I think it's a TPZ thing.
We approve it for Boy Scouts, for,
Well, those are using our A-frames, though. This is when they have their own it's their own A-frame, right?
So isn't this on town property?
it is on
Yeah.
town property, and it is,
The
I think the Boy
firehouse
Scouts,
piece, the triangle.
I think the Boy Scouts have their
Which is
own
it?
A-frames. I don't think there are A-frames. They're not.
But they're not for profit.
They're not for profit, correct.
Yeah, and that was part of the, things would be preferred based on whether it was town organization, whether it was a nonprofit.
Do we have other for-profit businesses or institutions that use town property that
Not that I'm aware of.
have to get permission, or that have to get a permit or anything like that? Is there any, I'm thinking when the vendors, the food vendors go to the town green, do they have to have some permission?
They
and
go through,
permit?
yeah, like for example, food trucks.
So all the food trucks have to have a permit, and they pay for that and everything else?
Correct.
It seems like, I'm trying to think of where else we have for-profit people who get to go onto town property with anything. And that's the only thing I can think of, and those guys have to have a permit, and it's obvious why they're there, because they got product that they're
Right.
trying to sell the crowd, and this is just an advertisement, which is different.
I agree. An advertisement for a for-profit organization.
Yeah.
My inclination is to not have advertisement for for-profit organizations on town property. That's what I'll offer in terms of my inclination.
That's the feedback we seem to receive from those we requested it.
Even beyond the program conflict, it's just like, I just think that that's dangerous.
Yeah. Can I ask a related question? So this is an A-frame signage. What about lawn
Lawn signs?
signs? Because I see for-profit lawn signs. Maybe it's technically state roads, but state property.
That's definitely a TPZ.
But
Yeah,
those.
it is a bit, and we did at the same time mention it to Chris, and she can give us a better insight into this, but
Okay.
they're not supposed to be there. They can be on a piece of property if you're putting on a roof and on somebody's property, you can put a sign in front
Like
of
a
that person's property.
paving, but not
things
like
of that nature.
music lessons on the corner
Correct.
of Beecher and
Correct,
Center
and
Road.
we're seeing more and more and
Yes.
more of that, and we can take them down. Enforcement is through Public Works, and we pointed out to Public Works, they can take them down. They can call, and, you know, I've asked everyone to be courteous, contact, if there's a number or something on that sign, obviously use it to contact that entity and let them know that we're taking the sign down, and why. But yeah, it's becoming more and more of a problem, and it's kind of what brought this up as well.
And just to clarify, is there a difference in state rules about that? Because we also have some state roads going.
Yeah.
Yeah, the DOT is,
But it's also not allowed, or
10
maybe we
feet
don't
from
know.
the road is their right of way and they can take the sign away.
Yeah.
So they
They
said, that was
rarely-
why they said, don't make a policy because we'll come and take that sign away
Okay.
anyway if we decide it's interfering with the
They-
traffic.
They don't do it very often, obviously, in my experience, but it's their responsibility on state roads.
Okay.
Yeah. But even
This is
10
a
feet.
state- This is a state road.
But
too.
even on our town-owned
Well,
square, that little
right.
triangle, 10 feet in from the road.
Belongs to the state.
Not
The
supposed
state's
to.
jurisdiction, yeah, yeah.
But this sign was specifically on our property.
Well, I don't know if we need a policy, because every sign that goes on town property has to get a permit to do it, and we can
Has
accept
to
it
get
or reject it.
approval.
It has to get
Has to get
approval, not
approval. We can either
yeah,
approve or not approve it.
And that's what this is. They've applied
Yep.
appropriately.
Okay.
They filled out the application, they applied and say, will the Board of Selectmen approve us being able to put a sign in? And that's what this discussion is about.
Can I just jump in for a minute?
Please.
If there is no policy, it sounds like there might have been some discussion of a potential policy in the past. But if the board is going to entertain these types of requests, I would definitely recommend putting together some sort of sign, flag type policy. I see variations of them from town to town. Some are very limited and very narrow. We're only gonna allow town, state, US signs, Army, PALMIA, and those are the most defensible policies from a legal standpoint. Because there's no real discretion where someone who gets denied can then say, well, you denied us, but what about them? So there is an alternative version that does allow for some discretion to the Board of Selectmen to vet certain flags or signs that are proposed on town property for the year that's consistent with the town's just overall dynamics and but it is less defensible from a legal standpoint. So just my recommendation would be, if we're gonna keep making these types of decisions, or we expect them to come, sometimes we see these more often, like Gay Pride Day, there's groups that want to fly certain flags or put certain signs up. So to give these boards the legal authority to say yes or no, I would suggest we work on a policy.
We have been working on one so far, and I think if with your help in terms of some of the things that some other towns have done, we might be able to get that done in quick order.
Sure. Great.
Because I know we've already started looking at it. The first step in the process was to formalize a form, so that if there was any requests, nothing's considered unless you fill out this form. So if the form hasn't been filled out, we can take the sign away. Just to start with that, but I think we can continue this and continue and work with you on that, Nick.
So does that mean we just don't act on this until we've got that policy form?
I think we have a request, and it's a request that we would receive.
Well,
As
we
a
could
matter of
always-
fact, during our last special meeting,
We could table it
I think we
for
approved it
future
for the Boy
consideration.
Scouts, didn't we? The flower sale.
Yes, the Boy Scouts, we approved the usage for their annual flower sale. It was for 3 Saturdays, and they have some signs up.
They
around.
followed the same process.
Yeah.
But that's
So
a Woodbridge group, and it's a
And it's
nonprofit.
not- right.
there's
Right.
justification, to Nick's point, but there's some justification we can be made for, right, a nonprofit organization versus a for-profit. That's what we're considering.
We don't have a policy.
Historically, how have we responded to requests from for-profit organizations or businesses?
We haven't
I
had
don't
very
recall
many.
any, to be honest, during my tenure, you know.
I don't remember any requests, except for this one.
Ah,
It's fairly rare, in my experience at least, too.
And it's interesting, because this one kind of just appeared, so and who
Right.
knows, they might have been doing it for years, putting it there for years. But, you know. we happen to catch it.
Somebody finally noticed it.
We happen to catch it. I can tell you that when it was brought to my attention that it was there, it's like, geez, I've gone by there at least 4 or 5 times, I don't think I've seen it, remember?
Yes, I do
Oh.
remember.
So-
Making it look good and then we
So
notice.
it's not something that I've taken notice on. But for purposes of continuing on, we do need to identify whether or not we want to approve this, in my mind. It is an agenda item, and,
well, we've gotten some feedback from other stakeholders in town, that have mentioned what you had mentioned earlier about for-profit businesses putting signs up in town. I think if we do this, it opens up the door for other for-profits to ask us for signs, and in lieu of making a policy where we may limit that, it's perhaps prudent to not ever do it.
Have we ever tabled a
Just gonna ask.
request? You know, it's filed in front of us, table it for the next meeting.
Well, I
Or-
wonder from a legal standpoint if we're on more solid ground by,
I think you could continue it. I mean, there's nothing legal, I mean, that is obligating us to act tonight on this request. Like Mika said, it's a request to the board.
I guess my question would be, if we table it, what are we waiting for?
A policy.
Well, that'll
But
take
could you-
more than a month,
That'll
won't
take
it?
way more
Well,
than.
just the dates they wanna put the sign up, just for reference,
Yeah,
on the
they-
form that they applied for, was from today until May 25th.
So through Memorial Day.
So if you,
So we table it, that's
So
all
just
set
for some
the reason
perspective.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does, I mean, couldn't, it seems like there's consensus on how we're feeling. If we are making a policy, maybe we just say we will not entertain, or like we'll maybe say no to this with the understanding that we're putting together a policy and it wouldn't feel right to
well, it
do
I'm more
anything.
inclined to consider, I appreciate what you're saying,
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to make a decision. And my inclination is, and what I'll do is I'll make a motion that we not approve this A-frame based on the fact that it's for-profit organization. And that would be my motion. And then beyond that, I'll say it's very specific. I don't want to set a precedent. I do not feel this is something under any circumstances that we would or we should consider going forward. So from my perspective, I feel we should not do this. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Now we can talk about it any more that you want, but there's a motion on the table for us to not approve this.
Are there any for-profits that we would approve? Can anybody think of one?
Nebco. No, I'm just.
Yes!
yeah, but back to beer, just like that.
I feel in addition, maybe what I should also include is,
I just, I mean,
in addition, in this particular instance, as was indicated, we've gotten stakeholders who have indicated this is not the direction we should be going. So that coupled with the for-profit aspect of it is.
yeah, we've got
what
3 people who
motivates
said
me.
we shouldn't do it, and it is a for-profit. And then, if that causes us to generate a policy, maybe we made the one decision and then we make a policy to
There's
justify
no
it.
reason we shouldn't make a policy going forward
Yeah,
anyway. I agree.
Exactly.
But this one is here, deferring it is the same thing as saying no, I just assume say no.
And there's
Is
still
really where I am.
opportunity for them to put signs elsewhere, just not on
Correct.
town property.
Right,
So
and-
we're not excluding them from having signs up in town, it's just not on
Well-
town-owned property.
Yeah,
but they have to,
They have to follow the
do
zoning,
the
yeah.
elementary,
Yeah.
go
They have to
through
follow.
and get,
They have to follow the
So
protocol.
have they
Yes,
done
yes, they
that?
follow.
Because the signs are in multiple places, so have they done, do we know if they've done that?
I don't know, we could check with Chris.
Yeah, in addition to your motion, which we have to vote on that, but in addition to that, we should probably check, because if we let some entities do it and we don't let other entities do it, then we're selectively enforcing our zoning regs, which undermines our zone, right?
This-
We
this
can't
is specific.
selectively enforce.
To town property, though, I agree with you. I
Right,
totally
but I'm
agree.
saying
Totally.
elsewhere, you're saying that they can do it elsewhere.
I'm saying
By following our rules,
motion
yeah.
doesn't exclude private property, so
Right,
just
and
as people
so
can
maybe
put it
when
out.
we communicate back to them, we
Yeah.
say, you can do it elsewhere, but please follow the rules that we have established for elsewhere.
I just wanted to be clear what our motion does, is just say,
Yeah.
not on town-owned property.
All right.
And this is no reflection. I think the pool club is a great organization. Thankfully, they're here,
Yeah.
particularly considering the decision made on our pool, our beacher pool. So but it's just more of a policy type of a situation with this particular element that I feel is not appropriate.
Okay, I mean, I understand your thinking and wanting to just say no. We could tell them, we tabled it, which means you can't do it. And we're gonna formulate a policy that will apply to everybody, so we're not just picking on you. And that would be the same thing, which is why I favored just tabling it, just letting it go, because it's not approving it. And it doesn't single them out, that's all. But
Is there another motion?
I move we table this, which the move to table does take precedence over any
It does. That's why I asked.
motion on the table. So if there's a second to that, we can table it and start talking about something else.
We still have to vote on it.
We can vote on it.
Is there a
If
second?
there's not a second, then we'll have to vote on it.
So I actually would second this,
Okay.
because I
Yep,
think that
understood.
it protects us a little bit more from a complaint.
Additional discussion in regard to tabling this? Okay. Take a vote. All those in favor of tabling this for another time? Aye? All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda. Acknowledge, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that we feel we should remove? Like anybody's gonna say that now.
Are we gonna remove something from this one?
Zoning Board of Appeal, oh, no, that was on the.
Yeah, I'll
boards and
make a
commissions.
motion to amend the agenda to remove the appointment of the zoning board of appeals. Is that?
No,
No, that was,
Oh, you did- yeah, that was
like
boards and
agenda
commissions,
items
that was
about-
Yeah.
boards and commissions.
No, I mean, that was to remove the appointment
Yes.
of
Yep,
zoning
yep.
boards because he found out he couldn't be
Right,
appointed.
right, that's not in this, this is,
No, you're on consent
Should,
agenda.
do we need to just correct that it's ZBA, right, alternate instead of TPZ alternate? Do we
Yep.
do that with the?
That's a typo.
It's just part of the consent agenda with the update of that?
it's updated,
It just
right?
says TPZ here. Right,
It's
No, I
been
think-
It's
updated.
been updated, yeah.
Yeah, it says zoning Board of Appeals.
I have an outdated agenda in front of me
Yours says
all
draft
meeting
right
long. It does say draft, but that's the one that was in the
If you go in the folder
folder
and open it. it should be-
today. Did
Yeah,
it change?
yeah, it was a typo, it was all
Okay.
updated today to reflect the change.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
sorry.
yeah. But,
So,
I was-
I
again,
mean, if it was updated today,
is
it's
there
not on the
any,
agenda.
is there any items that
You can't-
feel here?
You can't do
If
that.
I may, just for clarification, on the town website, the agenda on the town website does still say TPC. I'm assuming you're talking about C.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, yeah.
Karen,
let's
yeah,
just
the-
update that.
The town clerk hasn't updated it. I know we
I don't
talked
think
to
you
them
can
about that.
update it when you're within 24 hours of the meeting,
that's right,
so.
you're right.
So
Technically.
anyway, so for the consent agenda purposes, just to make sure that it is corrected in the official when we consent to it.
Sounds good.
So is that a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Next item on their agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Good job, team.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you hanging in.
Exciting motion.
Thank you.
You were punchy.